Gonna help you, Madam Vice Chair. Maybe I don't want people calling you Dr. Breathless.
It's temporary, he's coming.
I just want to.
One make sure we don't make
Don't want to make that mistake, you know. You see, I'm a nice guy, you know? No matter what anybody tells you.
Yeah, I know you're a nice guy.
Are we ready, even Stevie? Okay, welcome everyone. Hope everybody's doing well. Happy Valentine's Day.
That's right.
Yeah, tomorrow is a big
Happy
day.
Frederick Douglass Day.
Yes, it is actually.
Tomorrow's Frederick Douglass birthday.
That's, what do you know, the history of everything. That's true.
I'm gonna walk in this door.
Yes, yes. Okay, I hope everybody's doing well. I'm just gonna get this going until Mr. Blakely gets here, and then he will take over, because I know he does this much better, very well. I would like to go ahead and first, let's make a motion to move to approve the agenda from our last meeting.
Motion to approve the agenda from the last meeting.
You talk about the agenda or the minutes?
The agenda,
So the minutes is the agenda for today.
yes.
No, I'm sorry, with the
It wouldn't be
agenda
last meeting,
minutes
you would approve
from,
agenda
from
from
last time.
The last
No, the agenda for today.
What's the You wouldn't approve the agenda from last week, you would approve this.
Oh, no, yeah, that's what I mean.
Yes,
Yes,
as I second Mr.
and he's already, yeah.
Okay.
You just seconded.
You did?
Well, yeah, he proposed,
Did you second it?
oh, yes, I did.
I didn't hear. Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, and then we are going to, why isn't the minutes? Move the minutes.
That's the minutes right here.
Can we do that, even though it's not?
I
Not yet.
amend my motion to approve the agenda for today and the minutes from the last meeting.
So moved.
I guess that calls for me to amend mine too. I second what you just, I second that. That's okay. We are confusing you. Both of them have been,
Well, no, because I usually think we approve the minutes, but that's missing.
We can still, I think, move for it.
we know that.
Yes, you will.
Oh, you okay with that, Mr. Yukonita?
Yes, ma'am. On your printed agenda, there was a clerical error, so
Okay.
the minutes were not on there, but on the chair's talking points, you are in
Yes.
order to approve both
Can
of
we do
those.
that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, then we'll also make a move to the minutes from the meeting of 123.
Yeah, I think we did that.
I amended my motion
You
to
just did a
approve the
motion.
agenda and the minutes.
I thought you took it back, no?
No, I amended it.
Okay.
So my motion is to approve the agenda for today and the minutes from
As
the
well as
last meeting.
minutes. Okay, awesome, and then you second.
Yes, I
Okay,
second that.
all right, okay, then we're gonna move into public comment.
Madam Chair, I believe you have to take the vote
Yeah, we
on the motion.
Call for the vote.
Yes.
So all
All
in,
in favor?
aye.
Anybody opposed?
Anybody opposed? Oh, do we have anybody in Zoom, or that's it, right?
Yes, we do.
We do.
Can you all hear us on Zoom?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you.
Anybody opposed?
No, we're in favor.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and read the instructions. I know you all are familiar with them, but I have to read them for the public comments, because that's the next thing we're going to move to. For anyone attending, attending guests, if you are interested in speaking during the public comment section of the meeting, please use the sign-up sheet link in the chat box. I guess that's online. Each comment will have a maximum of 3 minutes. The public comment section portion of the meeting will be limited to no more than an hour. If more than 20 comments are received, time per comment will be reduced to 2 minutes. If more than 30 comments are received, time per comment will be reduced to 1 minute. Okay, do we have any? We do. Okay, if you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Sharon McGill, and I'm a community member. And every committee is different, so I'm not sure if I can only address what's on the agenda, or I can address anything that is associated with EDAC. So I want to stay within your guidelines, so, because some committees let you address whatever topic might come up for that committee, and others just let you address what's on the agenda. So
Okay,
if you let me know, I want to stay within your guidelines.
I would defer to Mr. Eady.
It is the will of the chair. Historically, you all have allowed members of the public to speak on issues that are not germane to tonight's agenda.
I don't have an objection, so.
Okay, so it's, thank you, by the way. I just wanted to find out, because of everything that's going on with the school issue over on Fort Myers Beach, has anybody from the EDAC committee been included in those discussions? Because as part of your coverage, it says that the committee shall review and provide input concerning revisions to the student assignment plan and any proposal to acquire a school site, construct, or abandon a school facility. So I was just wondering if anybody from this committee have been included in those conversations, or the committee has given an opinion.
And I would say the answer is no.
Yeah.
Unless someone has come as a member of the community and not as a representative of EDAC. The conversations have been primarily between the superintendent, key staff, and the political leadership on the beach at this point.
Okay.
The superintendent, I believe, will be making a recommendation to the board on February 22nd, if I can do that off the top of my head. And that's a very interesting question from a policy point of view, so I will bring it up with the board
Okay.
attorney.
But Sharon, Madam Chair, I think it'd be quite in order for this committee to get more details about the issue, because some of us are not aware of that.
Okay, yeah, and there, I guess that would be, Kathleen would probably be the best one to.
Well, that's really, no, that's what the committee this committee wants to do. I was just providing information, so the committee has to give direction for me to do anything else.
I was just asking because it is part of the policy that this committee is supposed to review and provide input.
What, just a point of clarification perhaps, if the construction committee will at some point be involved or informed in that process, there is a member or two, a couple members of EDAC that are also assigned to the construction committee that may, and I'm not that familiar with school board policy, but that may meet that requirement, since we do have input, and I believe Mr. Kimball's on that, in that construction committee.
And I will say that I don't believe that anybody from the construction advisory committee is participating, because we aren't treating, this is not a typical acquire, sell property situation, but thank you. Again, I will bring it up with the board.
I mean, the closest thing we've had is we had a discussion regarding, Dr. Malloy was here last month to discuss the proximity plan. I mean, we didn't really touch on any issues with Fort Myers Beach, but, that sort of somewhat, will it'll address some of the issues there.
If I may, to continue the agenda, from a staff perspective, district staff is very aware of the policy that references if there are proposals, and I believe the board policy states to abandon a school facility or a proposal. If I'm not mistaken now, there's not been an official proposal, they're just recommendations that the board would consider. However, if the board is in a posture to take a proposal forward, that conversation would be shared with this committee. But as of now, they're just lists of recommendations for the board to consider. So there is not an official proposal to abandon a facility as stated by the board policy. But key district stakeholders are very aware of the fact that EDAC should have some input as it relates to the abandoning of a facility. And that has not been a proposal that has been adopted by the board at this juncture, outside of whatever recommendations that the superintendent staff will provide relative to Fort Myers Beach, but there is no official proposal to date. But that is something that is definitely on the radar, Mr. Chairman. And if you all like to continue for the good of the order, we'll take any direction that you all provide for that.
Peter?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Edie and Ms. Morgan. But so many of us, I don't know about other people, but I believe that we are not so clear about the real issue. And if Ms. McGill felt it's important to bring up this committee, she might, can you provide a little more insight why you felt it's important for this committee?
Well, because it has to do with equity.
Right, so what is the issue?
And that's the part of it, because I don't know how much you know, I don't wanna overstep my bounds here, how much you know about the school and, I mean, it's knowledge, because it was a board presentation, so I'm not saying anything out of school. but the amount of money that is being spent per child at that school is over 2.5 times what it is on average for the rest of the school kids in Lake County.
At which school, I'm sorry?
Which to me
Madam
seems like there's an inequity.
That's not fair. That
There.
is inaccurate.
We thank you for your comments, and I apologize for my tardiness. I think Ms. Morgan has taken note of it, as well as our staff liaison who's provided context if there was a formal recommendation regarding abandonment of the school, that at which time the EDAC committee will take a look at that. So we appreciate your public comment. Are there any other on Zoom for public comment?
Are there any members on the line for Zoom? We don't have any on the sign-up sheet. Any additional members of the public on the Zoom link who would like to speak? No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
At this time, we will move forward to our next agenda item for a presentation from our small business policy. We have our Executive Director of Business Services, who will provide an introduction and presentation for us today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Susan Millay. Thanks for having me back. I presented this topic similarly to the EDAC committee about, I guess it's now been almost a year and a half ago at the end, about the district's adoption of a small business enterprise policy and program. And we are moving into the program part. And so I wanted to bring an update, share some decisions that have been brought forward as recommendations, and gain feedback from this group as to how we proceed. I have the presentation electronically and in paper format. Would anyone like to have paper version? All right, so in December of 2021, the school board adopted a small business enterprise policy. And today we're going to go through the drivers for the program, some updates, and get your community feedback so that we can continue with the program implementation. So I'm now on slide 3. Are you able to pull it up?
I have Zoom on my computer. So
Okay,
give me
so you
my-
want me to connect here? Okay, and present it to the front, is that?
Yes, ma'am.
Would that be helpful? How about our folks on Zoom? Is there a way that we can get it to them?
I'm running it on Zoom.
Pardon?
I have it on
You
Zoom.
have it on Zoom? Okay, great.
Hello.
Is there someone new to allow? Are you familiar with this one, Jared, in this room? Maybe is there a remote over there somewhere?
There is.
Let's see if it'll say okay.
Slideshow.
Slideshow.
Oh,
Okay. Okay, so our drivers for establishing the program and bringing it forward was to increase small business participation on district contracts, to increase competition locally with small businesses, and also on not just small projects, but major construction projects that have a more pipeline into the large businesses from the small business community to create jobs and foster economic growth. So where we stand is the board has adopted the policy, and since we've last met, the district has partnered with FGCU to administer the certification process for becoming a small business. The Small Business Software Development Center, Small Business Development Center at FGCU has staff who are focused on educating small businesses, helping them get loans, helping them do bids, helping them find jobs, et cetera. So we thought this was a great partnership because we have the same goals in mind. Our goal, after the policy was adopted, to define what is small. When we're talking a small business, how do we define small? And that's the key thing that I'm here to share with you today. We've gotten some information on that and want your feedback. So other things that we're doing are ongoing community presentations and feedback. So we've met with the Construction Advisory Committee, the Finance Advisory Committee, EDAC, and others to gather information and before we finalize anything to get community input. So our partnership with FGCU includes a couple of different offices there. First of all, the Regional Economic Research Institute did an analysis of how many small businesses do we have in Lee County? What kind of trades are they? And how many employees do they have, and those kinds of things. In addition, the Small Business Development Center has met with us to talk about how they would capture data, register, and recertify candidates who want to enter the program. So the big news, the first big news item is that we have this partnership now with FGCU, and they're gonna help administer the program through their small business development. So on to defining small. We came up with 3 areas to measure what is a small business, and the first one is employee size. So FGCU analyzed Lee County firms, also they reach out to the 5 local counties in the area, but we focused on Lee County, and we have additional information for the other counties. And they have identified that 93% of our businesses fall into the category of either micro or small business 1 or 2 levels. You'll see the little chart up there defines that a small business enterprise 2 has a maximum of 20 employees. So 93% of the small businesses in Lee County have 20 or fewer employees. Just to give you a frame of reference, okay? Next, we talked about annual revenue. And so of the 5-county area that FGCU works with, they have the data and came up with over 500 firms have an average of 1.1 million in revenue. And the recommendation was, in order to go a little bit bigger than that, to have a threshold set at 2 million. So we talked about number of employees, 20 employees, amount of revenue, $2 million as a defining component of what is small. And the next item that we added to the list is we felt that a business should have been established for a minimum of 2 years. So the 3 kind of milestone criteria we're proposing to the community for small businesses that to be to certify as a small business with the school district, you will have been in business 2 years, you will have 20 or fewer employees, and also, these are all ands, you will have 2 million in max annual revenue for the most recent 3 years, 2 million per year. Okay. So those are kind of the key data points we've come to after analyzing the data, and wanted to have a discussion with the group of how do you feel this reflects based on our the population of small businesses in our community, and the metrics that we've come up with. We'd like feedback before coming up with a decision on how to proceed.
I noticed that, we're looking at contracts and stuff, that historically, minorities have not been able to get a lot of those contracts for bidding reasons. And so a lot of agencies sort of like, I guess it's still small business development run by Roy Kennington, where they build in Toll's Garden. They're required by law to have 14% minority contractors. And his goal is to try to get up to 40%. In your small business plan here, although you're trying to help small businesses, you're not singling people out ethically and so forth, is there anything woven in your program to help minority small businesses to make sure that they have an active participation in this process?
That's an excellent question, and we had a board presentation in February of 2021 which the legal team presented options to the board for going out for a small business or a minority business, policy.
Mhm.
And it was determined, a couple of salient points that came out of that were that, in order for the district to have a minority business program, we would have to do a special study to assess the number of minority groups in the community. And then we would have to measure what percentage of our work was issued to minorities. And that a way to faster implement a program would be that because the majority of, I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact percentage, but a vast majority of the minority businesses are small businesses.
Right,
That instead of spending $600,000 to $800,000 to do that study,
right,
to collect the metrics, it would probably take 3 years to
right.
get that going, that the board wanted to act sooner. And in order to act sooner, instead of designating it a small business enterprise policy, a minority
Minority.
business, if we went small, we could adopt it immediately.
That's for
So,
everybody.
right, so in February of '21, the board gave the thumbs up to go small, and in December of 2021, the board adopted the policy. And the goal was to roll it out in 2022. We were on our way, had a little hiccup there with Ian, but we're still moving forward to make it happen. So the board was very interested in a minority program, and that was the board's determination and direction to staff as to how to proceed was to roll out a small business program and to collect the data on minority participation as we roll it out. So as we establish our program and we start collecting the data, because right now the district doesn't measure or ask if firms are minority, so we need to start doing that. And so as we collect that data, we will be postured then to do an internal assessment and see if it makes sense to do the external study to have also a minority program, or to see if maybe our small business program might be realizing the same goals.
Well, the person I was talking about, Roy Kennix, has been a professor at Morehouse, ran a small business here, I have a lot of people get in business and build a total garden. He would be a good consultant.
I've met with him twice.
Good. You know him already.
Yeah, and Mike Love and several
Mike
members
Love
of the
too.
community we've reached out to, they've participated
Very
in
good.
the draft policy, the draft a year ago, and they've also participated in the.
The lead board participated in this as well, because he works with Total Gardens, right?
I'm not sure that I know
Okay,
that
he's one of the
person, but I'd
contractors.
be happy to get his contact.
Okay, good.
Yeah, let me just understand this. So 2021, it was recommended that if you have to do something about minorities, you'd have to do a study to know how many are there. So what was the answer? Was that yes, we're gonna do it, or no? 2 years later, she said no.
Right, so the study would cost between $600,000 and $800,000, and based on how Miami and others have performed it. And actually, our attorney at that time was from a district where this program was implemented and had a lot of ideas about what we could do to move forward in that direction.
And that might be correct, Ms. Murray, but I wanted to say, just here now I'm looking, it may not be accurate, but I do have the list of all minority businesses in this country. They're available, it's public information, we got it. It's not accurate because some of them have closed down, some of them may have, but I have with this data is available.
Right, so we have that list also.
Yeah, so why would we move forward then?
So the state manages a list of, by county, all minority-owned businesses.
We have it.
And so the question is not, are there minority-owned businesses? The question is, what percentage of work is being conducted by minority-owned businesses? And because we don't collect data on, are you a minority business or are you not when you work with the district, we don't have that data.
Yeah, I made a misunderstanding. What I'm saying, what I heard you say at the beginning was collecting data on minorities was going to cost a lot of money, right? You just said this.
No, the study, there is a,
Study, okay, I
there is
get
a-
it.
Disparities.
But anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but the point is, where there's a will, there's a way. And then we already have businesses, all that we need, we have the emails even. And if we're going to do a study, I don't know how much it will cost, but I don't want to get too far because I don't want to disagree with you. But I think there are easier ways of getting it, may not be absolutely accurate.
so I will share with you just an anecdote if I could give one answer. So previously I was over procurement as the director there, and that's been 7 years. And back then, we were downloading the state's minority database, we were using that. We contact all minority firms when we go out to bids, and we have been using that regularly. And when I did the assessment, I think 20% of our, was it 20% of the dollars and 80% of the contractors from, because the county also maintains that. So we have data about the minority firms.
Right.
The disparity study would assess how much money is generated and spent by the district and how much money is generated by those businesses, and is there a disconnect that minority businesses are not well represented? And so I'm here to say, as the output of those conversations with the board and the legal team, the direction that we took was to move forward rather than delay, rather than to spend the money, move forward with something that can be more of an immediate
Right.
impact,
Okay.
and also gather that data coming down the line.
I was gonna say, Mr. White, thank you for sharing that. I think it speaks to the next process. You were talking about the certification process.
Mm-hmm.
I think what she was saying, and I don't want to speak on her behalf, was that the board wanted to move expeditiously and get things, a policy in place, but what was listed on slide 2 is there's an ongoing collection of data and track metrics. So once the
Right.
policy is in place, to track the metrics and to identify if we are targeting or hitting those metrics, the outcomes of minority organizations. So I think that's gonna be a salient point that as the policy is implemented.
Mr. Chairman,
Well, Mr. Kimball first and Mr. Bingham.
One of the first I have been to Florida Gulf Coast here and has a small business development department. Is it likely they would have that information already through their research?
Yes, so they also have the list of small businesses in the 5-county area,
Right,
which the district has access to also. We are already informing those business, but to be honest, just informing and inviting is a small move. And what we're trying to do is make a more targeted move and even move towards contracts that can only be pursued by small businesses, and
Okay.
large businesses will be excluded from the competitive process. So that's by carving out a niche area for small businesses and then only soliciting among the small businesses for the work, we think is a way to engage more with small
did
businesses.
you hear what's going on in Hydus? They just started a 6-week business program there.
Awesome.
So 6 weeks and they help you get in there.
Yeah, comment.
Yeah, and just, this isn't my comment, but Goodwill has a program too, Micro Business Enterprises
Oh, sure.
program,
Yeah.
that's real good too. So I have 2 questions. The first question is, do you know what's involved in the application process? For example, what documents would a business need to submit? I see in the presentation that it's gonna be administered by FGCU. How long does the approval process take? I'm just trying to get an idea of what this certification process is going to be like. And then my second question is, okay, once a business is approved as a small business under this criteria, what exactly do they get? What priorities, what do they get? What is, what? So you're a small business, what's the, what?
So what, right?
Yeah.
Right, okay, so the first question is what is involved in the process, what documents are needed? It's gonna be very, very simple. It's the 3 things that you would need to prove are that you've been in business 2 years, so your SunBiz registration, which is a public document that every business has, and proof that you have 20 or fewer employees, and showing revenue, showing tax documents. So the reason we came up with those and what we've been talking about is what do they already collect? What is easy for them to administer? And the district will not receive their tax documents or those documents that show how much revenue they've generated. But SBDC at FGCU would do that. And we anticipate, kind of the way I anticipate this happening is that we engage the community, get people excited, interested, registered, and we review the existing data that we have, and we figure out there are three avenues that we want to do for small businesses. What do they get out of it? So once we see how many, the types of the small businesses, we can identify the types of bids to issue that are exclusively for small businesses to bid on. And one of the ones that I think that would be great for that is currently we have what we call a continuing contract. And there are continuing contracts for construction managers. And the Florida statute set a limit of $4 million, but the district has always had a smaller limit. And the goal for the smaller limit was to encourage small businesses, but to be honest, it hasn't really been working well because it's open to everyone, and so small and large businesses come in. The large businesses submit for the $4 billion work as well as the $200,000 or $300,000 work. And they had been significantly winning more business because their presentations, their qualifications, their proof of work was stronger. So if we can carve out and say, we're interested in hiring construction management firms for jobs that will be under a threshold, it might be $200,000 or $300,000, probably won't require bonding, so that's not a hurdle that they would have to go through. Then they'd be able to get in, develop themselves, get their processes in place, working with the district, get their badging requirements, and work on those smaller projects so that they can build their business. The second area that would come out of that is that now we're strengthening our local pool of subcontractors for when we're building schools. And we would then potentially have more qualified and district experienced small contractors, not to just bid on the set aside contracts for them, but to support the large businesses in building our schools. So,
Just a couple of follow-ups. So am I understanding correctly that we've gotten to the point where we know what the criteria is gonna be, we know what the process is gonna be, but what bids that small business will be given priority to has not been yet finalized, is that correct?
correct, we don't want to say that we're looking to hire small business plumbers, but we find out there are no small business plumbers in Lee County.
And I guess the last thing I have is just a suggestion, and this goes along with some of the comments here. I mean, I understand, that the board didn't want to spend the money on the study, but, my suggestion is that you market this program to minority businesses. We know, we have a list of what those minority businesses are. So my suggestion would be that we let minority businesses know about this program and let them know, hey, this is a program that's available, get certified as a small business, this is how you do it, so that they can be first in line when it's time to make the application.
Right, so the way we're thinking exactly in line with that. So one of the things that we do when we do our first bid and we identify, so one of the ones that we're looking at is grease trap cleaning in kitchens. We have 88 kitchens, we need our grease traps cleaned.
You gotta get a Hispanic business for that.
And so finding small businesses in the community, actually the procurement came forward and said, this would be a good one because when we had 4 vendors show up to have a discussion about the bid, and they were all small businesses, and one guy said, my family's in the car, and we're going out of town as soon as this meeting. So it just showed us that that was an area that if we could just set that aside as a business for only firms registered as small businesses can bid on, then there's an opportunity for them to get their foot in the door with the district, and that business is not gonna go away. You know, if anything, we're building more kitchens, so it's a steady, supply of work.
Thank you.
You mentioned that, there is, I think the reference continuous, contract.
Continuing contracts.
Continuing contract, is that information provided, or accessible to small businesses as they're applying for certification to be aware of what those continuing contracts may be to?
Absolutely. The great thing about how we do business with contracting is that every bid is publicly available, every winner is publicly available, all the prices awarded are publicly available. The amount that the board is anticipating spending in the coming year, when that contract expires, all of that is available 24/7. And is a great, when we work closely with businesses who wanna learn to do business, we'll walk them through that and show them where to go and find that information. And so that would help in, first of all, what does a bid packet look like for the district? The number one problem that we believe that we have is, you know, it's a 40-page document. You know, there are 12 pages of forms. Well, if you don't know those forms, you don't know if you need an attorney, you might not have a great ability to digest legal information in English. So we're looking at having training sessions to help people complete those documents. We're looking at SBTC is going to help us with that as well. We've trained them and they just loved it, and I get calls every week. I went out and I showed more people how to find stuff and do that competitive analysis on your website. So absolutely, the data is there and people can learn from what exists already.
Just a quick comment, as far as like training for that, another suggestion is to reach out to partners in the community. I know Goodwill has a micro enterprises program. That would be right up their alley. The collaboratory, they work with small businesses. That would be another avenue for training.
Yes. I think I had the collaboratory, but I didn't have Goodwill, so thank you.
Have you communicated with Michelle Hilton and Small Business Development run by Phyllis Galloway? And they actually do that training and help. Mr. Love used to run the program. Phyllis Galloway runs that program now.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion here. Okay. I hear you and you present very well, but I still feel, and I'm glad I'm sitting next to Ms. Morgan, that this committee should recommend to the board in a motion form now, and I reflect it properly for that.
Can you hold your motion till she finishes the presentation? She got a couple more slides, so I wanna make sure she's able to finish. She had to finish the presentation, I wanna make sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought she had
That's
finished.
in order,
Oh, we did too, I'm sorry.
but I actually, okay, I'll hold that, but for this part, I wanted to, I'm not making my motion yet, but for this question, I think I'm in agreement with the ABCD.
You're good with them?
I'm good with that.
Okay.
I have a question. What does the certification process entail?
So they would come and they would pretty much bring their tax report for their business and provide it with, to FGCU. And that would show number of employees, amount of revenue, and then the SunBiz. So the certification is those three things.
And then they were registered.
And then they would be registered. That's it.
Is that information here available as to where they can go and make contact?
Well, so we are still in the listening phase. We are proposing this. I will tell you, this is, I had planned to meet with you in the fall. And so the other committees that I've met with have each come back and recommended that the $2 million, item number C, be increased to at least $10 million. So what they're saying is if you do 2 jobs and they're $1 million each, you're out of the ballpark. If you do 5 jobs and they're 250,000 each, you're right there as not being eligible. So the other committees also said the type of work that the school district does, right? So we don't usually buy little itty bitty things, right? We buy lots of stuff for our 100,000 students at our 90 locations. So we are typically buying larger quantities of things, services and commodities, so the thought of not, somebody that only has a $2 million business, two other committees recommended a $10 million threshold. So I'd like to hear from this committee of what you think of that.
I'd be curious to see what was the statistical analysis that identified the 2 million, how was that established? Because I think I can understand the thought process of having that threshold risen to allow for additional jobs, but if that's not something that's in the forecast of Lee County School Districts, then I think we should raise it, just say raise it. But if the scope of work for a small business that's less than 20 employees or less, and it hasn't capped at 10 million ever, then I think we're raising it just to have it there. So I think assessment is important, kind of turn that to it.
Here's one data set that I do have. It's not about the dollars, but it is about the number of employees. So this breaks down by trade. And so you can see that there are a few areas: construction, wholesale trade, professional, scientific and technical services, and waste management have the largest numbers of people. So I'm meeting with FGCU again this month, and so I will ask them if they can give me a similar data sheet from, instead of on employees, the revenue. Is there a particular way you would like that question phrased?
I would just compare the employees and have a comparison chart with the average revenue of those. So again, employees between 25 and 50, average revenue is 12 million annually versus 20 to 15 is 3 million, then that gives us an idea of where that range potentially could be.
I may have missed the answer to the question that I had. I had asked what if they were interested in how and who to contact. Did you say it's not?
So we are not ready to roll the
Okay.
program out yet. We are still in the listening process of, as we're defining our standards, is this a standard that this group is willing to accept? Because once we make our commitment, we're gonna roll it out with the terms defined, and so we're at the definition stage. So, the way it will work when it does roll out is both the FGCU Small Business Development Center and the district's procurement department would advertise, click here to register. It would take you to the FGCU SBDC site, and then you could you would ask a short questionnaire, and then you would have somebody from the office contact you to get your documents for your tax records so that they could process through that. So we're thinking the first couple times this happens, if we issue a bid that's just for small businesses, we're gonna lengthen the amount of time for the bid process and have the first 15 days be a time to make people aware of the bid, to get registered, to become aware of the program, to meet with SBDC, and then typically we have about a 30-day period, so we're thinking we would lengthen that to 45 days, that people would have an opportunity to respond, to get registered, and, we'd be working with FGCU to make sure that, if no one's registered, we might delay and continue the bid to be on the street for a longer period of time so people could continue to register and bid.
Quick question, follow-up to Dr. Blakely. So on slide 7, I think, it showed that there we go. So those 500, based off of that study, it looks like that FGCU already did. Is that a snapshot of the overall number of firms to include what Dr. Blakely was referring to in that slide of thousands of businesses? So is that just a snapshot? So perhaps
Yes.
that data is there?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is as close as what data that I have, so thank you for bringing us back to that. So this just talks about, and so I'm gonna go to the prior slide, which shows number of businesses in Lee County. So if that's only 584 out of 37,000, right, that's a small number. 543 firms are falling into the up to the $10 million threshold. I'm not positive I have all the info, but I think you're right. I think we need a little bit more data on that. So I'll take that back to FGCU and ask for a little bit more clarity there. I think I'd like to see, as we talk through it, a chart like this, but for the dollars. By trade, by number of companies.
I think that gives you a more accurate picture and the data then to make a more informed decision on what that threshold should be.
Good suggestion. Okay, and then any other questions? I'll go back to where I was in the slideshow. Good for the next one? Okay. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about what that process would look like. So FGCU would, the district would publish our bids as we normally do. And then SBDC would coach the candidates on, completing the registration process. And also they offer services on obtaining loans, best practices for, your billings and so forth like that. And they even help complete bid packets. So they would be, that's what they do. And then we talked about how frequently should we recertify. We like that number 2 so much, but we decided that 2 years is too frequent because that would mean every other year you're recertifying. So we went with 3 years. Again, these are just things the ideas that we're presenting that are open for conversation. So if you have feedback on that number of recertifying every 3 years, we're open to feedback on that as well.
Yeah, and I thought that was a smart move. 3 years is good.
I have a question with that. With the recertification required every 3 years, is there a notification process of that? Is that them having to identify themselves, going to a website saying, oh, my expiration is coming, because how sometimes deadlines can pass.
Right.
Not
I'm
really.
sure that SBDC will be able to have a tracking, and they will report to us on the frequency. We're working out, okay, what do our reports look like that you're gonna give us? How frequently? And so that as people register, we're gonna have that information, and it'll be great to reach a 3-year period. I'm looking forward to that point.
And the second comment was, with FGCU's Small Business Development Center, are there opportunities for feedback mechanisms between the district and SBDC as it relates to individuals who may not receive a bid or contract to have a feedback mechanism?
Yes, they have already indicated that they would wanna know who bid, who was successful at bidding. So they have already asked that as we've gone through and said, what kind of data exchanges do we need to do? What do I need from them? And they asked, one of the things that they would need is how many people submitted bids and how many were awarded bids.
And with that, would it be any feedback to the small businesses saying forms, the application material, there or something to help the small business in development? Is that something that they will lead in? Will they review that documentation prior or after, saying these may be some reasons why it was not selected?
So, our procurement department will meet with any business who has submitted a bid after the bid's been awarded by the board and to get a debrief. Share with me, what can I do better? Where did I score low from the committee when you were ranking us? What was it? And I will tell you, we've had some real success stories with meeting with some firms and telling them that. And then they're winning left and right, and the other firms are going, what happened there? How come that firm's winning? And so the word's getting around that if you lose a bid, I shouldn't say that, if you are an unsuccessful bidder, right? Oftentimes, there's a lot of bidders and only one award. Sometimes there are multiple awards, but it'd be great to know where you scored low, and so that opportunity is available for anyone right now who is interested, and we communicate that to people.
So is that early in the contract, the application, they would know that?
Right, so what happens is there's a bid, there's an evaluation, then the board approves it, and then after the board approves it, since it's not open anymore, it's been awarded, then we can say, okay, this is the analysis of that award, so for the next time, you could improve if you did, strengthen this. Yeah.
Excuse me, so if you have already been certified and you make the bid after your certification term comes up again and you lose the bid, you're immediately notified that you haven't been recertified?
The recertification and the bidding are two separate things.
Okay.
So recertification is how big is your business? That's independent of whether you ever submit a bid or if you submit 100 bids. So just the great thing that we would like to see happen is people outgrow that because they've gotten so much business that they're no longer under 2 million or 10 million or 20 employees, right? So you would outgrow that after the third year when you presented your tax data and it said, oh, I've got 50 employees and I'm now a $25 million business. That is like graduation from the small business program, and that's what we would hope to see.
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
it does, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, so wanted to talk a little bit about how we go ahead and solicit bids from folks and what that might look like. So as we embrace and roll out this program. So we are working now on defining, what businesses, what services and products do we buy that we think might be supported through the small business community. So we're working on those to try and identify specific solicitations that can be released just to small businesses. And let's see, so at that time, so I had mentioned 3 ways earlier, but I only told you 2 of them, that small businesses could participate on the continuing contracts as a subcontractor to a large firm, and also for a direct competitive solicitation for small businesses. So I go back to grease traps or landscaping, right? That might be another area where we're saying you can only bid on this work if your business is small, and then we might be able to hire multiple small businesses as landscapers, for example. So that's what we're looking at in terms of that process, and FGCU would notify the procurement department of vendors who, when we go to open the bid, FGCU, we would be in touch with them and they would tell us, these are the current certified small businesses within FGCU. And that's how we would just check off as we open bids, yep, we've got that information from FGCU. All right, so our next steps are to continue our community outreach, to refine our numbers, take your data back and make it even better before we pull the trigger and go live with this program. Continuing working with FGCU, identifying the types of businesses that we want to issue exclusively for small businesses, identifying prime contracts and small business opportunities and putting goals in our prime contracts of, a 5 or 10 or 15% goal for our large contractors that work with small and minority businesses. Let's see. And then, an important thing is collecting the data on firms who we do business with to find out who's minority business, woman-owned business, veteran disabled business, all of those things, because we need that data set to assess how we're doing with small businesses, and then to look forward to see if we can, then we'll have minority business information and we'll be able to assess how much of the contracting that we issue is going to minority businesses and small businesses. Questions?
Pretty clear so far.
I still have, it's good
I have
to
a question on the line.
For the folks on Zoom, do you have any questions?
At this time, thank you, Mr. Chair, thank you for the presentation. And here comes my motion. My friend is right here. I would like EDAC to make a motion that the board should explore all possibilities of ensuring that this SB program is diverse and inclusive in consideration of the minorities. I don't know whether that's the right language, but I think the board, you mentioned about the cost, you mentioned this, but the greater good, I think that motion is relevant.
So what I'm hearing from Dr. Daniel is motion to the board to ensure that the small business policy
Program, this program.
is, small business policy, collects data and analysis, collects data to analyze for equity and inclusion throughout the program.
Right.
Am I gathering that?
I didn't want even to just stick to correct data, does everything possible to ensure that there's
We're supposed to
equity.
collect data and analyze, so establish outcomes.
Whatever it takes, Mr. Chairman.
I think what he's saying, if I may,
Let's give Mr. Vedek, yeah.
is that the program be developed in a way to allow for maximum inclusion and diversity of minority-owned businesses.
That's right.
That's what I'm saying. Right. You put it in a much better, Mr. Vedek, but that's what I'm saying. That's the motion not had.
Do you want to add maybe a report back to EDAC on the data?
Yes, I assume that Ms. Morgan just points out, that report will be given back to, when she presents it to EDAC, to the board, so we'll get back a feedback for the motion.
So I have a motion by Dr. Dianui, that the small business development program is developed to ensure equity and inclusion and establish an annual report.
Mr. Bennett put it very well, it wasn't even too
The
complicated.
Small Business Enterprise Program is developed in a way to maximize equity and inclusion with respect to minority-owned businesses.
And as Ms. Morgan has reminded me, we'll get a feedback when she presents it to the board. It's not yet, I think I've already got a second,
If I need the motion correctly, before we make a second.
that's perfect.
Yeah.
I would like to hear it correct.
So you mentioned to recommend that the small business development program is developed to maximize equity and inclusion in respect to minority
Owned business.
owned businesses.
Mhm.
He made comments regarding the report.
That's good.
That's good, right there.
So the motion on the floor is that recommendation to the board that the program is, small business development program is developed to maximize equity and inclusion in respect to minority owned businesses.
With respect.
With
With
respect.
respect.
So move second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes,
Yes.
I beg your pardon, but is that not what one of the next steps were when she concluded here?
Which one,
He said,
which point?
That would be the ongoing data collection and analysis.
Is that not what you just said?
Let's look at-
That is our intent, and the request is to hold us accountable and make sure that we're going to do
That
that.
is what you said, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I would like it to be more specific as we put it in the motion, Ms. House, please.
That is what she said, and she did say that this whole presentation was development, is in development, so it's kind of
Ms. House.
a premature motion,
We
isn't
can
it?
take a vote on the motion,
Yeah,
can't we?
oh,
Isn't
We're
that
gonna
premature?
vote against it if they're not in favor.
Yeah, it's open for discussion right now.
Okay.
Is it, well, that's my question, it's premature if it's in development, and one of her final parts of her presentation was, or is, that I'm looking at the bullet point here, and what she said, following along with what she said, is, I'll put my glasses back on, but
So to Mrs. House's point, just offer to the discussion, would it be amenable to the motion that the last bullet point on slide 12 indicates ongoing data collection and analysis, to have language that says, it is recommended by EDAC that the Small Business Development Program, ongoing data collection analysis is developed to maximize equity
Yes.
with respect to minority-owned businesses.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to be very clear here. Stop playing games. I'm just making a motion to say it is explicit. We have had Ms. Mary's problem, we have had this conversation about the issues, about the costs, about all that. All that I'm saying is, we must be intentional and conscious of what the motion had led earlier on. And so I respect everybody's opinion. I would still want to move the motion, whether it succeeds
We're
or
in
not.
discussion right now.
Discussion, the motion's on the floor.
That's what I'm saying also. I'm mooting my statement on it.
If I understand, the motion is, if I may recharacterize it, it's this committee's desire that in the development of this program, that it be developed in a way to maximize the inclusion of minority-owned businesses. That's this committee's desire. And we want to express that desire to the board.
That's right.
I'm not, nobody's negating that.
Yes.
The board is, that this is part of the program, that they intend to do this, but we want to express this committee's desire that this be done this way.
And that's the motion at hand.
Just for additional context, Mr. Chairman and committee, I want to just remind you all of your recommendations from last year, just so you all are aware of what you recommended to the board specific about this topic. And your recommendations were as follows. EDAC recommended that the board create an annual reporting process between SBE and EDAC that would include periodic meetings, hence your meeting today. And your other recommendation was that the board communicate with local small businesses and organizations that foster small businesses such as Goodwill, Collaboratory, to make them aware of the district's needs and availability. So I just wanted to just remind you all of what you all discussed last year as your recommendations. And if you all had time to process, if you wanted to go forward, you do have your last meeting of the year where you will also take up recommendations as well as tonight's meeting.
Brother Peter, I think that what Blakely was doing was offering a friendly amendment to what you said. He never negated what you said, he took in consideration that they had made a recommendation, made a point that they were to collect the data, and he put those two together. What you suggested, along with that, saying that although we're collecting the data, we still need to ensure equity, and I think that's what you were saying.
And
And
that's
I think he
important.
said that in his statement.
That's important. I still want to hold the motion as I had put it, and it's quite correct what I said. We're in a discussion stage, and if you want, I can restate the motion. I'll restate it the same way I did earlier on.
Any further discussion? All right, at this time, we'll do a roll call vote for the motion on the floor. It's been properly moved. Recommend that the program, the Small Business Development Program is developed to maximize equity and inclusion with respect to minority-owned businesses. At this time, we'll go through
I don't think you need a roll call, Mr. Chairman.
all those in favor for the motion, respond with affirmative aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Got 2 ayes on Zoom.
All those opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
So, the motion carries, we have 5 affirmative, is that correct? And
2 on Zoom.
2 on Zoom? So, 6.
Six.
6. So the motion carries that the recommendation to the board that the Small Business Development Program, develop to maximize equity and inclusion with respect to minority-owned businesses. Any further questions from Mr. Warren?
Mr. Chairman, may I interject for a second from a staff standpoint? Ms. Malay mentioned a presentation that the board received. We will share that presentation in the recording with the committee. I think it's helpful to have the concept of what the legal counsel provided as it relates to the disparity study, and also the legalities and the parameters that have to be in place before the board considers anything specific to awarding or creating a DBE program. So I think as you all go forward to your meeting at the end of the year, it would be helpful for y'all to have the context as the legal specifics that are required and the guardrails that the board has to abide by as it relates to creating a specific program for an MBE, a Minority Business Enterprise Program. So we will send that recording to you all for you all to review in anticipation of whatever conversations you all may have at the end of the year for additional recommendations.
Thank you. Mr. Schuman, I would like to seek indulgence from Mr. Eden. There are two recommendations we had made last year. Are these two going to be carried forward, or what happens to them? Because you already had made two recommendations. This is like a third one now.
Yes, sir. Back to your original question, Ms. Malay's presence tonight is a response to the first recommendation that the SBE team would come back and to report to you all periodically as to their process. So that is that first part. And then the second part is for the outreach. Your recommendation was about outreach to places like Collaboratory and a lot of the groups that Ms. Malay mentioned at the top of her comments.
Right.
So those recommendations live in the board recommendation tracking document. And it is something that we revisit every year with the team members who come and present to make sure that that specific presentation is delineated based on what you all have provided for the previous year and years prior to.
Thank you, Mr. Eden.
Thank you again for the presentation.
You're welcome.
All work. Appreciate it.
I do have one further, so you had requested more data on the 10 million, 2 million. So we'll make sure that before we move forward with that, we get that data to you and have your say as to the thought of increasing of the three-legged stool. It's 2 years, $2 million, and in business 2 years and under 20 employees, thank you. You guys know my presentation better than I do. So I'll make sure that we get back with you before proceeding and to have further information as to why others wanted to increase that. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you for your help. Thank you for all participating in this committee. It's a really important committee for the district, so thank you for your time doing it.
Great presentation.
At this time, we will have our updates from our board meeting.
So I thought I would follow up a little bit on the question that Ms. McGill raised about the Fort Myers Beach and the issue of equity. And this came up as a result of the destruction of the Fort Myers Beach Elementary School and the board's conversation about how we're going to proceed with that school. And one of the things that came to the board's attention in this process is that the operating cost per pupil at Fort Myers Beach Elementary is approximately $21,000. The average cost per pupil district-wide is approximately $8,900. The other two island schools, Pine Island and Sanibel, run in the neighborhood of $10,000 to $11,000 per pupil. And that's one of the things that the board needs to be considering when we have our conversation about Fort Myers Beach. Now, with respect to abandonment, what some of these other issues are, what's on the table right now is that the board is in the process of restoring the historical building. We have agreed to do that. There are 4 other buildings on the campus that are not historical. So there are 2 questions. 1, what are we going to do with those pieces of property? And 2, what are we going to do about educating the kids? Right now, there are only 50 kids enrolled in this school. At the height, there were approximately, I'm going to say 170 students. So the board is considering 1, just completing the restoration of the historic school. 2, leveling the property and putting, actually not leveling the property, putting up a portables to house the students who are currently being educated at San Carlos Elementary. And this is where the conversation is taking place between the board and the community. At what point does it become sustainable for the board to continue to underwrite the operating costs of educating the kids at Fort Myers Beach. So that's the community wants us to rebuild the school. So that's one option. Another option is to do nothing, which is essentially where we are right now. And then in between those two, is there something that we're going to do with respect to either to rebuilding the school or putting portables on the campus to house the students that currently are registered in the school? Did I pretty much say what you would have said, Sharon? Yeah, I mean,
And it was
it's
sustainability.
yeah, is it sustainable from an operating point of view? The community is focused on the fact that the FEMA will reimburse us all or in part for rebuilding the school. We'd have to rebuild it at 12 feet above sea level, we'd have to do all kinds of things. And the community is taking that as our responsibility to build the school because we can get the money for the capital investment that's required. The board's concern is the operating costs. Right now, approximately $3 million a year is coming out of operating to sustain that particular school, which means it's coming out of the operating budget, which is intended for the 100,000 kids. So it's a very, there are some tough things for the board to consider. So that's one thing I wanted to talk about. And I wanted to also ask you, having heard the proximity presentation last time, are you getting any feedback from the community? Are you hearing anything about the proximity plan? Do people understand that every single child who's in elementary school is going to have to reselect in the coming school year? So what do you hear? What are you saying?
I think in general, the groups where I work, they're in agreement, everybody understands the cost. The
They understand the rationale.
They understand the rationale, there's no question about that. But they're very concerned about not something that is practical, is the fears which we raised in this meeting of dangers of segregation because our communities are still, but that is not something we can act on or do anything until we see the results. I'm not sure that everyone understands that we have to apply, that there are any serious implications. Let's say my kid goes to whatever school, elementary school. So if I don't apply, what happens? I forget to apply. Does the kid continue the next grade or what's going on there?
So if your child is enrolled at, let's say, at Pine Woods Elementary.
Right.
And you're no longer in that zone. So,
Oh, no, let's assume I'm still there, I'm not changing anything. I'm not moving away from that zone.
so here's the thing, the zone that school is in may have changed, and your address may have been in that zone at one time, but is no longer in that zone. And therefore, you will have to participate in school selection. If you choose to go to Pine Woods, even though you know your residence has not changed, but the zone has changed, you will have to either register to go to Pine Woods and provide your own transportation, or you will have to register at another school in the zone in which you reside.
And that we understand, and I believe that has been communicated. What I'm saying is, if I have no change, I still want to stay in Pinewood.
You can't.
Do I need to do anything?
I think that's a question that I've heard from parents as well,
Yeah.
saying that
Oh,
if I'm in my same zone, nothing, even if it's
Yeah.
rezoned, and I'm
That's
still
true.
in there and I'm going to the school,
Right.
no change.
there's no change.
No change.
I don't need
I
to do
understand that,
anything.
I don't have to apply.
Yes, right,
That's what-
got
that's
it,
what-
yeah,
defaulting
that's
into-
not clear, okay,
That
we'll
should
have
be
to
very
make that,
That is-
because you're right, I'm thinking about
If I
statements
change
have gone
something.
out and that hasn't been clear, okay,
Yeah, so.
all right. I know that's not an EDAC issue, but I figured this is
No,
going out.
but it's coming up.
Here
You
from-
asked a question of whether the community is saying, because that reapplication has not been reconsidered. I mean, we understand the principle of what we are doing, and people comply, need be.
Ms. House and then Mr. Campbell.
The one issue that I've heard in the Dunbar community, as far as the zoning, there's no middle school. And that's where the busing issue comes in.
Well, I can understand the busing issue in a K-8, but not in a K-5. We're not doing the middle schools. Middle schools
Well,
are,
that's where some of the, well, that's where I heard the chatter.
Yeah.
That's not-
Okay.
yeah,
Because some of them-
middle schools will be a
well,
discussion next year.
Well, that's what I've heard the
Yeah.
chatter about.
Okay,
It's still, some children still have to catch the bus, they're elementary school, that thankfully they might not have to catch a bus or get up that early anymore, but it's still, what about it's come see, comes up, why can't you do it for everybody? Because there's no middle school, when are you gonna put a middle school in, that's what they want.
well, that's a whole,
When are you gonna put a middle school in
Yeah,
the
and
Dunbar
that
community?
ultimately might be an issue for this committee.
Well,
Kids from the beach, are they going to high school? No?
No, they're going to San Carlos,
Okay.
because San Carlos had seats. What will happen is, if the board decides not to reopen or not to put portables on the beach for the 23-24 school year, the superintendent will make a recommendation about where those children will have the option to go to school. And it probably won't be San Carlos, because San Carlos is farther away.
You know, Heights is right in that area.
Exactly.
And a brand new
But I'm
school.
not going to
I know what you're
telegraph,
saying. Yeah.
what the superintendent's gonna do, but no, it would not be a mandatory move to San Carlos.
Kathleen, I taught that before they built that new school. I remember that, the old antiquated.
Heights is awesome. Just a positive note that I have heard in reference to the proximity plan is that I've heard that it's been a long overdue change, especially as it could trickle down to school start times, and that the focus should be on school start times for student success and not driven solely based off of busing and transportation.
True.
You're absolutely right. I mean, that's my dream, to do something about the high school schedule.
Well, we had a superintendent you weren't there at the time. You remember, school board came down on the superintendent who wanted to change for high school kids to start at 8 o'clock. I taught high school in this county and in Collier County. Kids will sleep at 7.
But anyway, that's beyond.
I'm sleeping at 7.
So unless you have questions for me, those are my comments.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll proceed with the update from our staff liaison.
I have nothing, just waiting for your comments, Mr. Chairman, for the good of the order as a respective to the month of May.
Alright, so at that time, we'll move to the good of the order. Before we open the floor, we did meet, board liaison, Ms. Morgan and I. We just did discuss the balance of the remaining meetings. So we are scheduled to meet, on March 13th to discuss the student code of conduct and corrective strategies, as well as on April 17th for HR recruitment and retention strategies. Due to the impact of the hurricane, we did miss a meeting. So I wanted to bring it to the discussion about the opportunity to potentially host a meeting in May. We generally do not meet in May, however, with us missing in the fall, want to give us opportunity to meet in May to discuss our annual recommendations to the board. So wanted to open the floor for discussion.
Okay, we're good.
And we have a date, it's provided for
May
you.
8th.
Okay.
May 8th.
It was April 17th, is that what we're
Yeah, March 13th, April 17th, and then May 8th will be the
Mr. Chairman, May 8th definitely doesn't work for me, but normally it's second week. You could go to the second week, like 13th, like May 15th. And then normally it works. Because we're normally on the second week anyway. I mean, yeah, remember like now this is the 13th, 17th. I don't know. 8th is not good.
We checked, because I think we checked for availability, and that's one of the reasons why we made that recommendation. 8th to allow-
Yes, sir. The 8th keeps in line with your standard meeting. That would be the second Monday in the month of May. That's why the 8th was recommended.
What about April?
Second
What
one.
about April?
17th.
That's not the second week, is it? No?
The second Monday is Easter Monday, so that week had to be bounced because April 10th is Easter Monday, so that's why we
Yeah,
said.
that's
You got
okay.
spring break in there, you got to.
That's okay, I don't have to be there, I'm just saying, I was just being
Yeah,
positive.
May 8th is the second Monday.
That's right, okay, I get it.
I'm
I
in
don't
favor,
know.
I'm in favor for a May meeting.
Me too.
I support it.
Okay, May 8th.
And actually, when I think about it, maybe because they Zoom, it might be at the airport town.
Any feedback online?
Any comments online? The conversation now is having a meeting in the month of May, tentatively scheduled for May 8th.
So at this time, I'll entertain a.
Yeah, I don't have a preference, it's fine with me.
It's Ms. Graham with no preference, Mr. Chairman.
So
Same.
we would need a formal motion.
Amy with no preference.
To vote for that, so entertain.
So moved.
So, Mr. Kimball moved.
Second,
And second by Ms. House for a May 8th meeting, at which time we will do a exercise where we review the presentation that we received throughout the academic year. And then from that, we will make sure that we make a formal recommendation, and every voice is heard about how that'll be stated, and we present that to the board.
For the good of the order?
Yes.
For the good of the order, two things. One, I think this committee should never avoid or kind of appear like we're running away from the times we are living. We are living in a time which is very difficult in education. Our teachers, our leaders, everybody, because of the things that happen in Florida, the whole world knows about it. We are the diversity committee, and everybody's talking about it. We should be able to address it whether we have a solution or we don't. So I would request that that be a major item in the agenda. I don't want it to be the last minute now, our next meeting. A substantive item, what is going on in the education in Lee County.
And we did have a discussion, last time we met regarding the superintendent's presence, discussing that, so we have.
I was to suggest that it be kind of it's important, it's going on and everybody hears I'm going to EDAC, oh my God, everybody's talking about it. We should not be seen to be avoiding it,
Yeah, Ms. Morgan and I have discussed that at our last meeting about that.
and we must address it. It's important. We should not be seen to avoid it. Two, my last point on this is, I'm tired of having, now there are only 2 people in Zoom, we have 6 people here or 5, we have a committee of 15 people. And there are far too many people missing every now and then. I see, like now, I just checked with Jared, there are 3 here who missed last week, and they are not here today, and we can't go on like this. This is an important business we are in.
There is policy that speaks to that directly, so that'll be approached with those who are.
Yeah, let's get people who are serious about this.
Yes.
It takes a lot of energy.
There is policy that's aligned to that, so it'll be adhered to that.
I am not,
And then we did formally meet and discuss a meeting apparatus, and it was
Right.
approved to meet in the hybrid model, so that was done by this committee, so.
yes, but I would like Ms. Morgan is here, the board to take action in that, because we sacrificed to get here. There's serious business going on. It has repercussions, and you're voting 3, 4, 5 people. It's tiring. This is an insult to the committee.
But, and just let me say, it is board policy, and it is responsibility of staff to be contacting individuals who are missing 3 meetings. And I don't know whether, so I don't know, Jared, whether or not anybody has missed 3 meetings and.
Well, technically, this is the 3rd meeting you all have had all year. So technically, no one has been in violation of the policy because you all only met in the month of September. You started back in January and now in February. So you've only had 3 meetings total this entire year.
That's true.
Yeah, but I'm sure I made my point. I struggle, I think this is very important from wherever I am, I have to run here, because we need to talk about this stuff.
If you wanna be on the committee, be on the committee.
Be on the committee, don't play games here.
Yeah.
Just don't be a name by the committee, it's wrong.
And we agree.
But I do believe if you miss 2,
No, three.
Yeah,
Is it
it's
three?
I think it's three.
You receive a
That's
notice,
right, yes.
you receive a notice after
It's
two.
consecutive, I think it is.
But because it's also on record, it is important, like somebody said, if you are in any committee, please respect the committee by appearing on you. If you're not, please get yourself out.
Okay.
It's that simple. You don't need me to be removed. It's wrong. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. I'm sorry for being a bit emotional, but I'm not sorry for what I said.
Anything else gonna be ordered?
Well, Kathleen, I want to go on record formally here, asking this board to take a critical look at single-member district election. It's important to our community at large to make sure we have representation. Right now, to have any aspect of it large is taxation without representation. It's clearly, it makes it very clear that we cannot hold the person accountable who's running at large. You're supposed to represent my district, and if I don't support you, you spend your time campaigning in those other districts and get elected to office again and never address the needs of my community. I want you to strongly consider this. It's a violation of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. If you're about equity, we'll be about changing it. We sued the city of Fort Myers in 1981. I became president of NAACP at age 28. We had to pay David Lippman $1.5 million of taxpayer money. Shoemaker was advised to sue the school board and the county at the same time. And I'm not attacking you, to sue the school board and the county at the same time, and she didn't do it, and I wish we had. The county commission, for the most part, have charter review committees, act as though they're gonna put it on a ballot, and we're not putting it on a ballot to allow the citizens to make decisions.
And let me just say to you, and I appreciate your comments, but I can't do anything. You have to appeal to the board. The board had that conversation in January.
Okay,
A decision was made in January. It's not going to be reopened again unless the majority of the board chooses to take it on. So your pitch is to everybody on the board.
well, I'll have to come, because that decision was made without hearing an alternative point of view. When you do that, that's called group thinking.
But just support, I'd agree both of you, but Ms. Morgan, because you are our liaison person, I think I support that it should still be recommended that EDAC still feels very strong that that's an important item. Whether they do anything about it or not, you've just done your job.
It needs to be a recommendation from all of EDAC. I
Yeah, but-
can't just go and say that a couple of people on EDAC want the board to reconsider this. If you want the board to reconsider it, then you're gonna have to make a
Then we
recommendation.
can vote for
I'm
it.
gonna make a motion, or is it too late to do that?
And
We'll
our
do that
second
next
line.
meeting. No, we do that at the next meeting, we'll do that, Peter.
Why don't you now? You
Can we
already
do that
there.
now?
Yeah,
The floor is open.
The board's open, I like.
and you have made a motion, I will
Make a
second it.
motion.
I think it'd be
just vote.
helpful for us to, one, there was a workshop that was completed in January.
Yes,
So I would recommend those from the committee to actually view the workshop and understand what was discussed there, so we can make an informed motion.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to have context to it before moving forward with that.
May I make a comment? You know, I think this is too important of an issue to just rush and right now. My recommendation is for our next meeting, which is set for March 13th. I would like to have, you know, I would like Dr. Kimball here to provide his viewpoint to this committee. And I would like to add an agenda item so that we can have that discussion. And make us all better informed about the issue. So we can learn more about it, and then we can entertain a recommendation to the board. It's my suggestion.
and I would suggest in addition to that, that you provide the information about the board workshop on it, so people will have seen both the
Yeah,
workshop
that's what you said.
and then have an opportunity to hear Mr. Kimball.
Yes. Are we not saying anything about Black History Month, Michelle?
Are we not saying anything about it?
Yeah, this is the
Me or
this is the
individual
month.
Me? Are you asking me?
No, I'm talking, no, I'm talking to the chair, to the committee through the chair.
What, I mean, as far as recognizing?
How is the school district recognizing that? That's what I wanted to know.
Each school does their own thing.
Yeah,
Each school does their own thing.
Well, what's going on?
Are you asking for a report? I don't have a.
Peter, depends on what school you go to. I can tell you what's happening in Old County.
Is there a school that you know is doing something about it? Mr. Edman?
I believe every school,
Yeah,
is
every
doing
school.
something about it. I just don't know what they choose to do at the high school will be different than what they do at the middle school, will be
Right.
different than what they do at the elementary school. I know that we as a board, did you watch the most extraordinary, oh no, you guys couldn't see it. For those of you who are unaware, before the board meeting, we have entertainment, provided by, musical groups from the different schools. We had a presentation by Tice Elementary. And Tice Elementary has the most extraordinary music teacher. And they performed, and then the music teacher's daughter, 5 years old, got up and recited a poem. Now, you know the poem, I'm a Little Black Girl?
Right.
And everybody in the audience, I mean, was just floored by her presentation, her confidence, her expression. I mean, just jumped up and applauded when she was done. It was an extraordinary for the board. I got goosebumps, really, beginning to the month of February. So yes, it is something that is,
Can I make one recommendation, to the youth, the board? There was a gentleman I had in Kappa, in that breakfast we had in MLK, who spoke about the dream.
Are you talking about Saldana, who said the Martin Luther King speech?
The young man,
He's my church member.
I think it should be played out in the board meeting, if you can do that.
We can invite him.
Some of those things, we need to be sensitive to the times you're living in, that's all I'm saying. That would be he's a very powerful speaker about the dream, and I would really recommend that. Mr. Sherman knows him, you know the young man.
and there are very strict rules about what takes place at board meetings, so.
Oh, no, wait, all that I'm saying is, like the little kid performed, this young man can
Same
perform.
thing, you like you have talent early.
Oh.
He's telling you about Saldana. He's one of our
Oh, before the
school
board
districts.
meeting,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm looking at you,
They
Jared.
recommend him. Jared knows the young man.
you know the young man.
Mr.
Right.
Saldana's son.
I think you all need to make a decision as a committee, not just individual conversations, that's how you all want to proceed. So I know exactly who you're talking about, I helped raise him, so I know exactly what you're talking about. But it needs to be something that you all make the decision for.
So the
That's what-
recommendation would be to recommend that this person, is he a child?
Yeah.
This
he's a
child-
Senior this year.
This young adult, perform, I don't wanna say perform, but, recite his speech, to the board prior to the board meeting.
I would just
You're right.
be cautious to make sure that, to your point, that we're not becoming performative. That
Will
we're
become
being
what?
attractive by asking people of color to perform their talents in front of other individuals and not having cultural competency of the moment they're having, so I think it'd be very
Okay, be cautious.
troubling to be
They perform
Yeah.
that.
All that,
ask people to come and perform. So-
Mr. Chairman, I agree with you because you have to tread cautiously. All that I'm trying to say is we be sensitive to the times you're living in and react sometimes, whether it is, let's say the women's, the Hispanic times, we should be living with the times. How we do it, we must be sensitive to it.
Peter, I don't know what the change is, but prior to DeSantis, the school district has always done, I've taught at Riverdale, Heights Elementary, Franklin Park, and Oakland. And every school I went to, we always did stuff for Black History Month. And in fact, if I'm there, Jerry will tell you that, it's not gonna happen without me. If I'm there and we're going to, and in fact, when I was at Oakland, I was the cultural relevance chairman that year. And I made sure we celebrated everybody's day. We had a door contest. And then last year Morgan did a contest. This year we did the Divine Nine at Oakland. And we had the kids from the AVIC program that did Langston Hughes in the cafeteria in front of all the kids. So a lot of the schools are doing stuff, but it really depends on how progressive your teachers are there who will move through to realize that kids need cultural awareness. I did this for Native American kids. I did it for Latino children. I did it for LGBT children. When that month came around, I recognized all of them, and that's what we call cultural equity.
Nothing else, I take your comments and, Ms. Moore and I do meet regularly to discuss the agenda items, so we'll make sure to take those items back, but, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Aye.
So.
Second.
That was-
Hearing no discussion,